The recap manhwa protagonist was selling his organs to pay for his entrance to the class transfer ceremony, his only chance to awaken a power, cautiously observing his surroundings before entering a shop. There, he informed the owner of his intention, that Yelin came from a poor family, so he should learn to use that weakness to attack him where it hurt most. The next day, Yelin went to the King Chen Academy. He walked tired, yawning from not having rested well. The students were murmuring about what he had done the previous day. Suddenly, someone tapped him on the shoulder with a bottle. It was Linju, who brought milk as a peace offering, along with breakfast. Yelin didn't understand the reason, but accepted the milk, suspecting it might be poisoned. But Linju assured him it wasn't. He said it was a way to show gratitude. Yelin didn't comprehend, but while drinking the milk, Linju confessed that the lightning he received the previous day had been like a wake-up call for him. That hit had made him realize he was wasting his life. He claimed that Yelin's presence had made him reflect. Then unexpectedly, Linju knelt down and asked to call him older brother. Yelin was surprised, thinking that he must have hit his head. But Linju insisted he was sincere, claiming that his defeat the day before had changed him and that he needed a role model. Yelin accepted to be it, but made it clear that he should pay some sort of tuition. To Yelin's surprise, Linju didn't refuse and immediately asked for the account number. Yelin headed to the field while handing it over. He indicated that he should transfer 2 million to sell a kidney and also a cornea, both for a total of 27,500 yuan, while the shop owner wrote down as an initial tuition payment. When Yelin asked if that wasn't too expensive, Linju reassured him, saying it wasn't, and that he would notify his father to send it immediately. At that moment, a secret testing realm opened in the field designed as an exam for students. The principal hoped all candidates from each academy would perform well. Everyone wished for the victory of their schools. Yelin and Sugeni were at the front, which made the old man alongside the principal think that they both belonged to the King Cheng Academy and had received triple S rank professions that year. To them, both looked extraordinary. However, the principal was upset, remembering that he had already told Yelin and Sugeni to keep a low profile, but those kids didn't know how to behave. 2 students had obtained triple S classes at the same time, and for him it was something really irritating. He bitterly laughed, asking why the others weren't commenting as if they had been born mute. The 3 elders accompanying him left saying they still had things to attend to, actually tired of listening to the director's arrogant attitude. What he was buying, he doubted the seriousness of the boys in the last 6 months. When the moment to enter the secret realm arrived, the examinees rushed towards the entrance like a big wave. Before entering, Sugeni invited Yelin to team up again, but he rejected her once more, which made her consider him arrogant. For her, if he was so eager to die, she wouldn't stop him. Yelin ignored her and entered the realm. Upon landing, he noticed he was alone, assuming the place applied random teleportation. Soon, a level 1 leopard appeared. Yelin felt no fear, only excitement, believing it was a perfect enemy to test his forbidden curse. He attacked the animal and eliminated it in an instant without any effort, rewarded with 10 experience points. But he felt disappointed considering it too little. He calculated he would have to kill 100 of those creatures, just to level up to 2, and that seemed useless to him. Later, Yelin allowed 100 monsters to chase him while he ran, smiling, convinced that this wave would give him the experience he sought. Among the creatures, there were some with a semi-human appearance. He stopped, turned to them. He had already sold him a kidney, a glass of gallbladder, part of his liver, a third of his liver, and also parts of his intestines, and expressed his desire to try a new forbidden curse. He cast his destructive search spell, a terrifying power that doubled his strength, agility, and spirit. With the fiery reincarnation activated, he thought that even a level 10 monster wouldn't withstand his final lightning of destruction. He attacked without hesitation, cutting through several creatures. However, he noticed that in just 5 minutes he had aged for using that technique, so he decided to stop the fiery reincarnation curse. He couldn't risk revealing his immortal body. To continue, he used his life preservation technique, sacrificing his left arm and hitting the ground while unleashing his forbidden fury, with which he eliminated a level 3 gray wolf, obtaining 30 experience points. Afterward, he defeated a level 5 two-headed snake and got 50 points more. Finally, he killed a level 2 bee, receiving 20 points, and with that he managed to level up to 3. Recap Manhwa Yelin was satisfied and surprised by his progress. Moreover, he learned a new forbidden spell, Hell of Flames, embracing the heavens. An hour later, Sugeni arrived at the area where Yelin had massacred the monsters. She was shocked to see so many bodies. If he delivered another kidney, he wouldn't last more than 2 days alive. Lying on the stretcher, the young man calmly assured him that he was fine, reduced to ashes, unable to believe what had happened. Then she sensed a trace of hellfire. Confused, she decided to investigate, as in Kinchin, only she mastered the fire element. However, the intensity of that energy was even greater than hers. Soon, she found signs that a human had caused that devastation. She was convinced that the academy hid hidden talents and vowed to discover who was responsible. Nearby, Yelin was roasting meat to eat. He enjoyed a three-eyed demon pig eating more than usual, because his body had consumed a lot of energy before. After cleaning up, he planned to head to a more distant area to continue training. Just as he was about to leave, his genie suddenly appeared. For him, it was a nuisance to find her, since he didn't want her to discover his secrets. He pretended to be calm, hiding his true intentions. Sugeni insisted that a master of forbidden curses was not made to train alone. Yellen became even more irritated when she belittled him while leaving, saying it was too late for regrets, and that following her wouldn't help him, as it was all to save his seriously ill sister. For him, any sacrifice was worth it. She even assumed he was seeking her company, assuring him that she had no time to work in a team. Yellen thought that maybe Sugeni lacked common sense. She, for her part, asked if he had seen anyone else, someone extremely strong in fire control and probably a user of the hellfire. Yellen, to get rid of her, calmly lied, saying he had seen a handsome man who went in another direction. He knew he had to avoid being linked to that power, so he decided not to use that fire spell again. Sugeni, while continuing her way, blamed him for wasting her time. Suddenly, she noticed a shadow over her. Looking up, she froze. A blood dragon beast. Level 8 was descending to attack her. She evaded its charge, confused by the appearance of such a strong monster. In that area, thinking Yellen had probably fled far away. She counterattacked with a storm of fireballs, but hardly did any damage. The creature roared and lunged at her, brutally knocking her down. Though she tried to repel it with more flames, the monster blew back fire towards her. When the smoke cleared, her genie lay on the ground, clothes torn. The owner stopped trying to advise him and lifted a huge butcher's machete. He raised it into the air and without hesitation, trembling in pain, realizing she had been too arrogant to think she could defeat a level 8 blood dragon beast alone in the secret realm. She feared dying at the hands of that monster, knowing it would be a humiliating death. Fortunately, someone intervened and attacked the creature using a forbidden curse called Hellfire. The poor monster was reduced to ashes. As expected, Sugeni was shocked to recognize that the user of Hellfire was the person she was searching for. Turning to her savior, she thanked that mysterious individual and wanted to know his name. The masked man was none other than Yellen. He was standing on a tree branch with his face covered by a mask. He introduced himself to Sugeni as Link G, explaining that Link meant dawn and G represented night. Bringing a finger to his lips, Sugeni acted curious and weak, wondering which school that mysterious Link came from. Although grateful for being rescued, she also wanted to discover who was under that mask. She hid her intentions, saying she just wanted to thank him properly when they left the G dungeon, carried out the procedure, causing the boy to scream in pain. After that, the one who looked like a living dead, Link, showing no interest, coldly looked at her. He didn't need her gratitude. He told her there was no need to thank him, as what he did was just a small effort. When Yellen was about to leave, Sugeni begged him to wait, trying to get up. But he warned her not to follow him. Ahead were even stronger monsters, and it wasn't a suitable place for someone of her level. Moreover, he suggested she first fix her clothes before anything else. Upon hearing those words, Sugeni noticed the state of her outfit and flushed with embarrassment, tumbling to the ground to cover herself, wishing to disappear underground. When she looked up, she found that Link had already left. Her genie shouted his name, swearing that one day she would catch up to him and proudly stand by his side. Meanwhile, Yellen was nimbly jumping from branch to branch, effortlessly distancing himself. As he put distance between them, he thought that this experience would be enough for her to stop following him. He had wasted time with her and needed to focus on leveling up. When he opened his status window, he noticed he had obtained a new forbidden curse called Immortal. This spell allowed him to sacrifice 2 years, returned home leaning on a stick to guide himself with his eyes covered in bandages. When he removed them, he looked at the people around, and a half of his life to nullify a mortal wound. The cost seemed absurd to him. The class of Forbidden Curse caster truly had a short lifespan, always playing with the duration of existence. However, for him that ability was a blessing. With that curse, he could deny a fatal blow even if someone stabbed him in the heart from behind. Moreover, it allowed him to activate other curses that required the heart or head as a sacrifice at least once. It was too good to pass up. Now, he could level up without fear and without restrictions. No one would stop his progress. 3 days later, which were also the last of the exam, the elders gathered at the entrance of the beginner's secret realm. The principal of the Kinshin Academy greeted his colleagues with his usual arrogant attitude. Among them was a short-haired man. The director, Sue, asked why he was boasting so much even if he had 2 students with SSS rank jobs. That wasn't everything. Another commented that sometimes level could be more important than rank, and smiled upon noticing that no one was watching or following him. Then he activated his regeneration ability to heal his wounds. He also pulled out a wad of money. A red-haired director agreed, adding that the highest record in the secret realm test of Chinchin was level 11, still unbroken. He recalled that student belonged to the academy led by Director Sue. Director Sue admitted that it was true, and wondered if that record would be broken this year. The director of the King Chen Academy replied that they would soon find out, as he trusted that his student would surprise everyone. At that moment, someone unexpected appeared to join the meeting. It was Suja Kian without Suja's father or the principal. His surprised comment was that he hadn't seen him in a long time, and the director of the Kim Chang Academy added that it was one not to receive him, as Kian was an astrologer of the academy. After the greetings, Kenshin asked about his daughter, worried that she might have caused trouble. The director, seeing the father's affection for her, calmly replied that know that Sugeni was the pride of the Kenshin Academy. Just at that instant, they noticed someone coming out of the dungeon early. The director of the Kim Chang Academy deduced that the person must be injured. The person turned out to be Sugeni. His body has an impossible ability. No matter how much he loses, it regenerates completely. He had gotten by selling his kidney and cornea, and quietly convinced himself that this amount, along with what he had already saved, who greeted those present and was surprised to see her father. He wanted to know why she had come out so soon, and the director asked her what level she was at. Serenely, Sugeni replied that she had reached level 12, which surprised all the directors upon seeing the record broken that way. Her director showed great pride in her, stating that she was worthy of being a fire mage. Kian, approaching his daughter, told her she had been too impulsive. As if she had stayed a little longer, she could have reached level 13. She replied that the dungeon had become boring since it was too hard to find level 10 monsters, and the rewards were minimal. However, the real reason for her early exit was another. She wanted to find Link. Being the first to come out, she could wait and see who would come out next. Meanwhile, inside the secret realm, Yellen sneezed forcefully as if he were already catching a cold. It seemed strange to him since the place wasn't cold. He wondered if someone was cursing him. With the level 10 monsters already eliminated, perhaps he had trained too much. Would be enough to pay for the class change ritual. He laughed as he walked as everything he had said was a lie. He decided he had to expand his search area. Raising his hand, he activated another of his new forbidden curses, called Instant Rank. This spell required sacrificing an organ based on its importance, and in return, granted agility up to 10 times more for an hour. Without wasting time, Yelin sacrificed a kidney and activated the increased agility to the max. The sensation was incredible. Not even a level 50 assassin would have that speed. Moving. Like lightning, he advanced with immense speed, creating a sonic boom and destroying everything in his path. He was so fast that before the storm mantises could sense his presence, it was already too late. Sacrificing his bladder, he invoked a lightning that incinerated the monster into ashes. That forbidden spell was known as Fierce Ash and Thunder. At the entrance of the beginner's secret realm, many students were coming out of the dungeon in groups, some filled with excitement and others with fear, happy to escape with their lives. However, all that time, his genie had been patiently waiting at the entrance. He couldn't believe that someone had accepted that made-up story. His name was Yellen, a traveler from another world, with the hope of seeing Lin Ji. After a long while, it seemed strange to her that he hadn't appeared. Only 5 minutes remained, and all the participants who had completed the test were called back to return to their designated academies. With the exam about to finish, it seemed that the highest record of that year would belong to her genie. This meant that the Kinching Academy had had great luck, besides having 2 SSS ranked students in the same test. But speaking of the SSS students, from the Kinching Academy, one was still missing from the secret realm. The countdown timer showed 3 minutes. Upon hearing this, Sugeni wondered if perhaps he had passed her target. After thinking about it a bit, she considered it impossible as she had been watching the entrance since the moment he came out. Then the portal of the secret realm began to glow with a golden light, signaling that someone was about to come out. Convinced, she believed it must be Lin Ji, but was surprised. An orphan with no sick sister. The place he had arrived at was saturated with spiritual energy. When she saw that it was her classmate Yellen, shocked, she couldn't help but think why it was him and not Lin Ji. Yellen, confused by what he considered an absurd question, simply thought the time had run out, and that was why he had to come out. What was the problem, Sugeni, overcoming her surprise, walked away coldly accusing him of being a coward and telling him not to come near her. This irritated Yellen, who gritted his teeth in anger. What was wrong with that woman? Was she crazy? At that moment, his principal approached him and asked what level he was at. He didn't expect much, just curious to know the progress of his second SSS rank student. Calmly, Yellen replied that he had reached level 16. The crowd present was shocked. Leveling from 1 to 16 required a total of 120,000 experience points. Each one of those monsters gave only 100 experience points, which meant Yellen had eliminated 1,200 of them. How was that possible? The principal began to praise him without rest, saying he was the pride of the King Chen Academy, surprised by his talent. Jianxin, with demons and beasts everywhere as well as countless dungeons. As an orphan surviving in this new world, also congratulated him, which further annoyed his daughter. She responded coldly that with Yellen's profession, there was nothing special about being at level 16. He was a master of forbidden curses. If he used those arts recklessly, it wasn't rare that he would level up quickly. Upon hearing this, the other directors agreed, considering Sugeni's explanation reasonable. The rest of those present also thought he must be crazy to use forbidden curses without rest in a secret realm for beginners. After all, Cursed masters rarely live past 25 years. And at that pace, he probably wouldn't reach 20. Some thought he was sacrificing his life for empty fame, which was truly foolish. Others believed he was doing it just to awaken envy, but would pay with his life sooner or later, so they could let him enjoy his glory for a few days. Then a long-haired director approached Yilin, seriously, and asked him why he was doing that, insinuating that perhaps Director Gao had forced him exchanging his life for the honor of the school. Offended Director Gao replied angrily, saying he would never gamble with the life of a student. Finally, had been very difficult until he discovered his unique ability, his body regeneration. Yilin spoke up. After showing a weak and sad attitude, he said that no one had forced him, that it was all his own decision. He recounted that he came from a poor family and had always been belittled. Now that he had the opportunity, he wouldn't back down even if he died at his moment of greatest glory. He didn't care. He wanted everyone to know that he could achieve it. After that speech, Qianxin clapped and calmly commented that those were well-spoken words, that this young man had great aspirations. In any case, he was the student with the highest level in the beginner's secret realm test, and that was undeniable. He was number 1. Then he introduced himself to Yilin as the father of his genie, and told him that if he ever needed anything, he could look for him. This infuriated his daughter, who questioned her father why he considered Yilin the best. She was sure that when Linji came out, his level would be even higher. Her father, in a gentle tone, asked her who that supposed genius was. The other directors also questioned each other, if any of them had a student with that name, but none knew him. Still, her genie insisted confidently. No matter how severe his injuries were, his body could recover in minutes, even regenerating lost organs. That Linji was a true celestial pride, and that everything would become clear when he came out of the dungeon. Meanwhile, Yilin silently cursed Sugeni, thinking she didn't know how to keep her mouth shut. Tired of that scene, he said goodbye to Director Gao and Qian before leaving, wishing to go home to rest. Shortly after, time ran out, and the secret realm test ended, but Sugeni was confused. Where was Lin Ji? Could it be that while she was talking to Yilin, he had come out without her noticing? She said goodbye to Director Gao and Qian before heading off to rest at home. Shortly after, time was up and the secret realm test wrapped up, but Sugeni was confused about where Lin Ji was. Could it be that while she was talking to Yilin, he left without her noticing? Annoyed, she started blaming Yilin, convinced that his absence was his fault when her father placed a hand on her shoulder. She insisted that Lin Ji was a true genius and had even saved her life. Or limbs. He used this ability to sell his own organs and gather 100,000 yuan, the necessary money. He then realized that his daughter's early exit from the dungeon was solely to find that mysterious Lin Ji, though he thought it was a bit strange. He asked if it was possible that Yilin was actually the Lin Ji that she was looking for. Sugeni strongly denied this idea, considering it ridiculous that her father thought such a thing. It was impossible for that coward to compare with Lin Ji. She remembered how Yilin had fled terrified upon seeing the beast with dragon blood in the dungeon, while Lin Ji had exceptional mastery of the fire element. How could Yilin, of all people, have such power meanwhile in his apartment? Yilin let out another strong sneeze that jolted him awake. He wondered who was talking about him behind his back. Surely it must have been that unbearable woman Sugeni. At that moment, Recap Manhwa, some knocks on the door caught his attention. When he opened it, he found a serious-looking overweight man. This man introduced himself as Mr. Wang, manager of the Qianxin Liquid Oral Company. He said he had been looking for him for quite some time and had finally to pay the costly class change fee. Only through that ritual could he awaken a true power. Found him. Once inside the apartment, Yilin asked what brought him there. Wang explained that he had good news. He had heard that Yilin had successfully changed professions and had also broken the record for the highest level in the secret realm of beginner Qinsheng, which is why his company wanted to formally invite him to be the face of their product, assuring him that the pay would be considerable. Yilin wanted to know how much exactly considerable meant. Wang raised 3 fingers, which equated to 3 million. Then he handed him a small bottle for him to try explaining that it was the company's new product, a brain liquid. According to him, it not only strengthened the mind and increased intelligence, but also regenerated cells, rejuvenating the consumer by several years. Furthermore, the company with over 100 years of history offered a 10-fold refund if the product did not work. Yilin uncapped the bottle, thinking that 3 million was worth more than several of his organs. It seemed that fame really did bring benefits. He drank the contents, which had a sweet taste, and become stronger. Only then would he have the chance to stand firm in this dangerous world, but immediately felt dizzy and lost consciousness lying on his couch while Wang called someone on the phone to confirm that Yilin had drunk the liquid. He had prepared backup plans, but they were not necessary. He considered Yilin naive. The order was to take him to his boss. Hours later at night, Wang delivered the unconscious Yilin to his superior, although he didn't understand why his boss was so invested in a mere student. He knew he had no right to ask questions. The boss who owned the black market store, where Yilin used to sell his organs, ordered Wang to leave. No one else was to enter without his permission, and those who disobeyed would die. Wang accepted and left. The greedy black market owner leaned over Yelin, recalling how he had sold him organs like the liver arteries, gallbladder corneas, kidney, spleen, and even intestines. The surprising thing was that they had all grown back. That was incredible. With Yelin, he could discover the secret of regeneration. In the midst of his delusions of grandeur, he fantasized about obtaining power and infinite wealth. In just a minute, he sells eyes, lungs, even the heart, all to reach his goal. During the ceremony, a girl gets a class SS, and maybe protects someone important. That day had finally arrived, upon arriving at the ritual site, to the point where even the most influential would bow before him. But suddenly he noticed something strange. Turning his head, he froze upon seeing Yelin sitting calmly in a chair with his arms and legs crossed. He couldn't believe it. The sedative he used was capable of knocking out an elephant for 6 hours, yet Yelin was already awake. However, Yelin was not worried about that cheap drug, but rather about how they had located him. The boss recovered from his shock and pointed his sword at him, warning that since his cash cow was awake, he would not be kind. If he surrendered, he assured him that he would not lose any limbs. His current profession was that of a level 20 Ghostblade, which meant he had an advantage over Yelin. But Yelin, with no other option, decided to get serious. He knew that if he used fire, he could set the whole place ablaze. So he chose another option to invoke the eternal ice gaze, a forbidden curse that sacrificed his own eyes to freeze everything he saw, leaving him blind afterward. The boss named G. Julian was terrified when the lower part of his body froze suddenly. A group of 3 people approached him to ask why he was there. They knew him as a poor student. The ice continued to spread as he tried to break it with his sword but couldn't. Soon his whole body was trapped except for his head. Desperate, he repeated that this was impossible. He was at level 20, while Yelin was barely 16. Even if he were a master of forbidden curses, he shouldn't be able to defeat him in one blow. What kind of monster was that young man? With Julian immobilized, Yelin took the opportunity to interrogate him. He asked him who else knew about his ability to regenerate organs. The man replied that no one else knew about it, and that a secret as valuable as that would not be shared with others. Yelin decided to believe him, but did not intend to let him live. He raised his fist and smashed it into icy fragments, giving him a quick death. After sacrificing his stomach for more power, he invoked lightning that annihilated the guards outside, leaving only one alive to interrogate him. Terrified, the man initially tried to deny it, but upon seeing Yelin's body surrounded by sparks, confessed that his boss in the shadows was Kensen, the king of the black market of Quincheng. As soon as he finished speaking, he was struck by lightning. Yelin, touching his chin, remembered that Kensen was one of the 10 most recognized philanthropists in the city of Quincheng. This complicated things. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the black market, so they didn't understand how he could afford something like this. Yelin, with a gesture of compassion, took Miss Wang's hand. A middle-aged man smoked a thick cigar while listening to reports from his subordinates. It was Kensen with a serious expression. He was surprised to learn that they had lost contact with his agent Julian, who had been out of touch for over half an hour. When they went to his hideout, they found everything reduced to ashes. From the remains, it was clear that it had been the work of someone powerful. Furious, Kensen slammed the table in order to find the culprit immediately. The next day, Yelin arrived at the Yi family's residence, where he was warmly welcomed by Lin Yu, who had become his loyal follower. After their previous encounter, as soon as he knew that Yelin would visit, he sent people to look for him nervous. Lin Yu mentioned the 2 million yuan that Yelin had requested, clarifying that he had already spoken with his father. But Yelin interrupted him, questioning whether he was trying to disrespect him by talking about money at that moment, since he had agreed to have him as a subordinate. For Yelin, money was just a minor issue. Upon hearing this, Lin Yu wrapped an arm around him and welcomed him enthusiastically, assuring him that from that moment on he should consider his house as his own, inside, and explained that he had taken a special loan for the class change. It was another lie, but he didn't want to raise suspicions. Lin Yu understood that his father was right. He believed that Yelin was someone naive who valued his pride too much. As long as he could take advantage of that, he would achieve his goals. For his part, Yelin had planned this meeting with the intention of using the Ji family as a shield against Kensen and his men. He was sure that Kensen would not dare to attack him inside the Ji residence. Upon entering the mansion, Yelin was surprised to see a long line of maids greeting him respectfully. This left him speechless, and he thought about how different life was when one had wealth. Lin Yu offered to assign one of the maids as a personal servant, and Yelin accepted at first, but then, a bit embarrassed, said he was just joking. However, Lin Yu insisted, adding that his boss also needed to change clothes for an important matter. Yelin wanted to know what that matter was, but Lin Yu asked him to be patient until they arrived at the place. Finally, they arrived at the annual Kencheng auction, a major event that Yelin had never visited. Lin Yu explained to him that he would introduce him to some of the most influential people in the city, but Yelin preferred to start with the food and asked him to continue with his affairs. Miss Wang was surprised, and the 2 young men accompanying her feared that Yelin would be tied for life to that loan. Inside, Lin Yu considered him naive and inexperienced, thinking that his poor upbringing still marked him. as Yelin ate heartily, especially because he had previously sacrificed his stomach and now needed to replenish his strength. He heard a voice beside him, asking why he was there. Turning around, he saw Sugeni and her friend Lu Jenny. The latter asked who Yelin was. He was annoyed to see her again, thinking about how irritating it was that that woman kept appearing before him. Sugeni responded with disdain, saying that Yelin was the coward who had fled from the monster in the secret realm of beginners, assuring that seeing him again was bad luck. Yelin smiled to himself, imagining what face Sugeni would make if she discovered that he was actually the masked man she admired so much. Shortly after, Lin Yu arrived with a group of friends and proudly introduced Yelin as his superior. The others reacted with surprise, and in a mocking tone said it should be Lin Yu who gave orders, but he corrected them, firmly declaring that Yelin was not an ordinary person and that his level was very high. Everyone was astonished to learn that Yelin had reached level 16. If he got a useless profession still, she allowed him to participate and even wished him luck in the secret realm of beginners well above their modest levels. Yelin calmly advised them not to be surprised and told them he was willing to help them level up if they managed to leave the city, as they could achieve good results in the higher exam. This excited them, but Lin Yu showed concern, since it was forbidden to leave the city before the exam to prevent students from receiving outside help. Yelin hinted that the journey to the exam site could be a good opportunity to level up, although he mentioned he lacked equipment. Lin Yu quickly reassured him, assuring that this would not be a problem and promising to give him whatever he needed from the auction. Yelin was surprised, but Lin Yu explained that his father would support with money anything needed to improve his performance in the exam. The auction began with the appearance of a beautiful presenter who introduced herself as Kinkin, wishing success to the attendees. After applause, she presented the first item, an epic fire-type skill scroll for wizards with an initial price of 500,000 yuan. The bids grew rapidly, telling him to go in before the ritual started. A few minutes passed, and the students gathered, being called to reach 3 million offered by Qian without Sugeni's father. Yelin watched the scene calmly and smiled, noticing that the man was spending freely for his daughter. Deep down, he felt satisfied, because as a master of forbidden curses, he did not need scrolls. All his skills were powerful spells. He then told Lin Yu that if something useful for his Shadow Blade class appeared, he should bid without hesitation, as a suitable skill could save his life. The auctioneer with a clear voice presented the next item, a royal dragon wish ring that increased spirit by 30% and granted the passive ability, Dragon Aura. The initial price was 2 million with minimum increases of 100,000. The bids quickly rose to 2.5 million, then 3, then 3.1. Yelin's eyes lit up. A 30% increase in spirit was huge, a real game changer for any awakened fighter. He encouraged Lin Yu to get it. He spoke with his father, who without hesitation offered 8 million, convinced that it was worth spending that sum. One by one. The first was Gao from the 5th year. Some commented that he wasn't from a wealthy family either. Gao went up on stage for his son to stand out in the national exam and enter a prestigious university. Besides, he thought Yelin would not live long for being a caster of forbidden curses, so sooner or later everything would return to the Ji family. The auctioneer asked if anyone would bid higher. No one seemed willing to exceed 8 million until suddenly a voice was heard offering 10 million. The place fell silent when Kensen appeared, tall and imposing, greeting President Yi, showing that they knew each other well. The atmosphere tensed as they recognized him as the king of the black market. Kensen did not usually frequent such places, and Yelin instinctively stepped back among the crowd upon seeing him, knowing he could not let himself be discovered. President Yi, intrigued, asked what his group had done to offend him. Kensen, with a grim laugh, pointed at him and reproached him for killing his men, demanding respect. President Yi calmly stated that he did not know what he was talking about, but if he was looking for a fight, his family was not easy to intimidate. He then offered 12 million. Kensen's face twisted into a smile, understanding the message easily. Everything would be decided in the end. As he left, he murmured to his assistant if he had already confirmed the car from the warehouse. The man nodded and assured that there was no doubt, and the principal instructed him to place his hand on the golden sphere and relax. After a minute, it came from the group and they followed him to the Yi family's villa. That very night, Kensen's expression turned grim. With that confirmation, he coldly declared that President Jin should not blame him for what he was about to do. Moments later, the Royal Dragon Wish Ring was sold for 12 million. President Yi offered the ring to Yelin and asked if he liked it. Yelin said yes and thanked him. Lin Yu leaned towards his father and asked who Kensen was. His father replied that Kensen was the king of the black market, a man who had tried to go legit but was now setting his sights on his family's empire. Kensen did not seem like someone who made empty threats. So Yelin warned President Yi that although the Ji group was powerful and usually attracted unwanted attention, it was wise to stay alert and careful. Upon hearing this, President Yi agreed. The Imperial Dragon Ring increased the spirit attribute by 30%. The bearer was blessed with dragon energy, and their luck increased by 10 points. Yellen put the ring on his finger. The principal announced that he had obtained a support class, a bird creator of rank, and a torrent of energy coursed through his body, his spiritual statistics rising by 30%, and his luck also increasing by 10. Excited, he assured President Yi that he need not worry that even if he had to force his son, he would ensure that Lin Yu entered a prestigious academy. President Yi laughed, reminding him that they were like family, that Yellen did not need to be so formal. He and his son were practically brothers, and any item he liked, he just had to ask for it. All night, President Jin did not stop pushing, and Lin Yu ended up completely exhausted when the auction came to an end. It seemed his father had swept everything this year. Anything that caught Yellen's attention, they bought without hesitation, accumulating several valuable items. Among them, the Celestial Lightning Ring, which increased spirit by 15% and strengthened all lightning skills by 20%. There was also the Melted Moon Necklace, which granted 200 extra spirit points. For mental casters, the Twin Bracelet granted 40 spirit points, a Fire Mage class, but when it's her turn, everyone mocks her for getting a Forbidden Conjurer result. The students murmured that Gao would be a bird creator for the rest of his life. The principal, and unlocked the duality cycle along with a passive effect of rapid wound regeneration. Yellen's eyes shone upon realizing that even if someone saw him regenerate, he already had a solid excuse. Finally, he obtained the prize of the night, the Fallen Star Sword, which increased 300 strength points, and under Starlight accumulated an additional 100 power. Yellen was almost trembling with excitement. With that sword, he could finally unleash the forbidden technique he had unlocked at level 10, known as the Art of the Sword, that consumes life with each strike. A year of his life was sacrificed, and each attack became twice as powerful as the previous one, accumulating up to a maximum of 99. With that weapon, he could dominate in the upcoming important exams. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Manhwa Sugeni was resting in her private bath, still annoyed and not understanding why the Yi family valued that coward Yellen so much. They had spent huge sums of money on him. Sugeni suspected that the Yi family was plotting something in secret. Otherwise, why pamper Yellen as if he were a treasure? However, encouraged him, reminding him that there were no useless classes, only people who didn't know how to make the most of them. At that moment, a maid announced that Liu Jenny had arrived to see her, accompanied by someone claiming to have information about the person she was looking for. Sugeni's eyes lit up. The person she had been looking for was undoubtedly Lin Ji. She ordered the maid to have them wait in the lounge, and quickly went down, eager to hear news about Lin Ji. Liu Jenny pointed out the man who accompanied her. He was Officer Hank from the Investigations Department. He claimed to have information about Lin Ji, but warned that it was not good news. Sugeni's heart skipped a beat upon hearing that. The officer, with a serious expression, showed her something on his phone. A farm on the outskirts of Qincheng had been set on fire, and there were several casualties. They also found traces of hellfire at the scene. Based on Sugeni's previous description, they suspected that the culprit could be the mysterious, masked man she had talked about. The department wanted her to collaborate in the investigation. Upon hearing this, Sugeni reacted immediately, firmly defending the masked man, asserting that he was not a murderer. Next, a young woman with a striking figure dressed in a tight red dress and leather boots was called. Her name was Sugeni, and she was admired by everyone. And that he had even saved her life. No one could make her believe he was a criminal without real evidence. Besides, why would someone who kills risk their life to save her? Liu Jenny attempted to calm her, while Officer Han continued calmly, understanding her reaction, but reminding her that, in her statement, she had said that the masked man used hellfire to destroy an 8th-rank beast with a single attack. However, in the investigation, there were no records of anyone named Lin Ji. What they did find was a person who caught their attention. The officer's tone lowered, assuring that there was a strong possibility that Yellen was actually that mysterious Lin Ji. Sugeni's eyes widened upon hearing this, but she immediately rejected the idea. Yellen, that coward, impossible. That guy always fled from danger. How could it be Lin Ji? Besides, Yellen didn't have the ability to use hellfire. The officer activated his lie detection ability, and his pupils glowed with a faint blue light. He asked Sugeni if she was absolutely sure. She answered without hesitation that she was asserting that she was the only. When she reached the stage, she placed her hand on the golden sphere, and immediately a phoenix appeared. One who had seen Lin Ji with her own eyes, and there was no way that coward could be him. The officer had never failed with his ability, so it seemed she was telling the truth. Finally, he thanked Sugeni for her cooperation, and asked her to inform him immediately if anything else came up. Meanwhile, Yellen had other priorities. It was time to test his new equipment. Lin Yulo took him to the official center of the Awakened Association, the main training place in Qingcheng. A receptionist greeted them and asked if they wanted to hold a session that same night. Linzhou confirmed, adding that his boss wanted to try his new equipment. She asked Yellen what his level was, and he confidently replied that he was level 16. The receptionist explained that the facility had standard training rooms for awakened beings under level 20 with a cost of 100,000 yuan per hour. They included strength analysis and mana calibration, and Yellen requested a room for level 40 or lower. The receptionist was surprised for a moment, but then nodded understanding. Linjo waited outside while the woman guided Yelin to the training room. The place was spacious, almost the size of a basketball court. The principal was surprised. Sugeni had obtained a fire mage class of SSS rank, with a row of dummies in the center. As she explained, the room was built with special materials, by an expert builder, and could withstand full attacks from users up to level 40. The same went for the practice dummies. For any of those fighters, it was almost impossible to leave a mark on them. As soon as the door closed, Yellen walked around the site carefully checking every corner. Once he ensured there were no surveillance cameras, he visibly relaxed and took out his Fallen Star war sword. He jumped forward, determined to test the forbidden sword technique, which consumed a year of life with every movement. Yellen propelled himself high into the air, gripping his weapon tightly, and suddenly entered a mysterious state. When he brought the sword down, his gaze became firm and deep. The first cut came with a deafening roar, as if something had broken into inside the room. A bright light shone on the blade, blazing with the life of its bearer. The second strike was even sharper and stronger, and the very air seemed to be sliced, forming an invisible energy. Proudly, he said that finally the Chinchin Academy could hold its head high. The students were impressed. Then came the third, the fourth, and finally the fifth. With each movement, Yellen's speed increased, and each impact surpassed the previous one. By the time he reached the 99th cut, the entire practice room trembled with a wild energy, filling the atmosphere, and a light never seen before burst from the sword, illuminating every corner. An invisible gust erupted from the blade and immediately pierced the dummies, shredding them completely with the accumulated 99 layers of the forbidden sword technique. Each blow from Yellen was terrifying. In that instant, he resembled a true god of war. After hundreds of cuts, followed by a metallic clang, the dummies that were said to withstand full attacks from low-level warriors, under level 40, lay shattered on the ground. Afterward, Yellen continued testing the rest of the equipment along with his forbidden arts, which caused a slight tremor outside. Linjo explained to the responsible woman that the important exams were approaching, and that Yellen tended to exaggerate when training. When Yellen exited the room looking satisfied, he already had a rough idea of his current strength, combining the forbidden techniques of Burning Reincarnation and Longevity Sword. Even Yellen, who knew that a SSS fire mage could rival an entire army. The principal congratulated Sugeni, along with his sword and other items. Linyu was curious about how quickly he emerged, and Yellen said he was tired and wanted to rest. He also asked if he would have to pay for the damages to the room. The woman initially thought he was joking, as the room was made for fighters below level 40. If a 16-level young man could damage the place, then the quality wasn't good. How could she charge him? Relieved, Yellen took the boy out of there while the woman entered to check. When she saw that almost everything was destroyed, she covered her mouth in shock. The dummies were cut, burned, and not one remained standing. Meanwhile, at the J family residence, the guards at the entrance were suddenly attacked by an unknown enemy. One received a poisoned needle in the neck when he tried to breathe. The other, surprised, asked what was happening, unaware that hands emerged from the shadows behind him and brutally broke his neck. Screams and blood filled the place. At that moment, President Yi was in his office when he heard the commotion. He hesitated about what was happening, but the old butler entered injured and bleeding and told him to flee. He didn't have time to explain further because a knife sank into his back. The man screamed in pain as his life slipped away and promised to discuss her training plan later, as her class was a big event for the school. She got off the stage, and it was then the culprit appeared. It was Kenson who showed up mockingly, and President Yi, furious, pulled out his gun. But before he could shoot, a long blade glinted like lightning, and before his incredulous gaze, his hands flew through the air. Kenson smiled contemptuously, calling him a fool for using a firearm against a warrior, saying he might have a damaged mind. Weapons could work against newly awakened beings, but starting at level 30, they were nothing more than toys. With his sword ready, Kenson was about to finish him off when one of his men arrived, informing him that the two young men were not in the mansion. Annoyed, Kenson decided to leave President Yi alive a little longer. Killing him at that moment would eliminate Lin Yu's weakness at once, but if he did not completely destroy the family, they would seek revenge sooner or later. He planned to use him as bait to lure the boys and eliminate them in less than half an hour. Everyone in the Yi family mansion except for Lin Yu's father turned into corpses. When Lin Yu and Yellen returned, they immediately noticed something was wrong. The guards outside had disappeared. That Yellen was called. As he walked, he heard them whispering about him, saying he had gone into debt. The villa was too quiet, and the lights were off as if there were no power. Yellen sensed the strong smell of blood and immediately entered with fear, telling Lin Yu to prepare. As he turned on the lights, Lin Yu froze. The bodies of fighters and servants were everywhere, with arms and legs torn off. Many had expressions of terror, as if they had seen the most wicked spirit before dying. Lin Yu stepped back pale-faced, denying reality, convinced it was not his home. Yellen warned him to be careful, but Lin Yu, overwhelmed by fear, ran desperately toward his father's office. On the table not far from Yellen, there was a sheet of paper. When he picked it up, he called Yellen to see its contents. Lin Yu arrived furious, his eyes filled with rage. The letter informed that if he wanted to save his father, he had to take Yellen to the underground black market. It also warned that every 6 hours they would cut a piece of flesh from his father. Lin Yu's fury reached its peak. He ripped the letter in two and swore he would kill Kensen with his own hands. He was about to go out to find him and fight to the death when Yellen grabbed him by the shoulder, assuring him that everything that had happened to participate in the ritual. Passing by Sugeni, he assured himself that he was his fault, and that he would go rescue President Yi himself while Lin Yu had to hide. Lin Yu refused, but Yellen knocked him unconscious with a precise blow. He apologized and promised to bring his father back safe, and sound placing Lin Yu on the sofa and leaving the mansion determined to show Kensen how terrifying a cursed master could be, who was not afraid to lose his life in the darkest corners of the black market of Kingcheng. Kensen's men were deployed everywhere, armed and alert. A shadow crossed the night sky and fell silently, without any guard detecting it. It was Yellen, completely dressed in black, and with his face covered by a dark cloth. He blended perfectly with the night. Although there were many guards, if he could enter unseen and surprise Kensen, he would have the chance to kill him quietly. However, just as he thought this, one of the guards pointed directly at him. Yellen was surprised, as he was sure he had hidden well. Then, he understood a hidden camera had betrayed him. The head guard aimed his weapon at him arrogantly. A class that consumes the user's life, but he smiles because his body ignores death in the entrance exam to the academy. A side character in someone else's story. He placed his hands on the golden sphere waiting for the result, and explained that the entire place was monitored with night vision cameras, although he had made a blunder. Yellen did not get discouraged. He decided that if he had to take them all out, he would. 3 guards approached, but Yellen set aside stealth and charged straight at them. He had carried burdens before, and did not fear carrying another as long as no one survived to discover his secret of immortality. He removed his mask and began to trace seals with his left hand hidden among the shadows. Then he activated a forbidden spell, Burning Reincarnation, with the support of 5 pieces of equipment that increased his mental power and his own 1,088 points, reaching 2,176 after activating the burning cycle. No one there understood the monster they were facing until they saw a line of burning fire emerge from his palms. The purple and red flames seemed capable of consuming everything. The 3 opened fire immediately, but Yellen effortlessly dodged the shots, then used another forbidden spell, Karmic Fire, that would decide if his life would remain miserable or if he would challenge destiny. Suddenly, a blue dragon appeared and Yellen was stunned, which burns the sky. This time he sacrificed his left kidney since the right had just regenerated. The fire illuminated the entire night and spread rapidly, engulfing the group in a sea of flames. The screams and wails were swallowed by the fire, leaving only the crackling of the combustion. 2 more guards tried to flank him, but Yellen used the technique of the fleeting dance, maximizing his speed. In an instant, he appeared before them, grabbing their faces with flaming palms. In seconds, both were engulfed in flames and died after screaming in pain, leaving only charred bodies. He emerged from the fire without looking back, determined to show Kensen that he had arrived. As he approached the main building, the door exploded into pieces. The air turned violent and formed 2 blades of wind directed at him. Thanks to his quick reflexes, Yellen dodged without difficulty and discovered that the attack came from a user of wind, clearly a job changer of level 30 or more. At the entrance, 2 enemies awaited him. As a celestial light enveloped his body in a powerful glow, the students couldn't believe that someone, a swordsman, mocked Yellen, calling him reckless for entering alone. His companion, a spearman, laughed and reminded him that their boss wanted him alive. The swordsman promised not to kill him, just to have a little fun before handing him over. Yellen unsheathed his Fallen Star war sword, immediately activating the curse of the vital sword in an icy tone, warning them of their bad luck. He told them to come as he wanted to see how many times he could cut them. The confident spearman used his wind magic, the air dragon, and charged at him. Yellen blocked and counterattacked with his first thrust, but the swordsman appeared behind him with a wind slash. Thanks to the fleeting dance, Yellen dodged and launched his second cut. Although he was fast, his strikes lacked force, and barely managed to graze the skin of his rivals, who mocked his mediocre skills. However, Yellen knew well the cumulative effect of the forbidden sword technique. He told them to be patient because soon they would understand his sword. The 3rd cut was stopped by the spearman, the 4th was blocked by both, but they began to notice something strange. Their attacks were becoming increasingly powerful and harder to contain, as his mastery of the sword grew sharper. With alone had obtained such a strong class. Sugeni was also surprised, thinking it could be another triple S class. The air dragon charged at him. Yellen blocked and countered with his first thrust, but the swordsman appeared behind with a wind slash. Thanks to the fleeting dance recap Manhwa, Jilin dodged and launched his second cut. Although it was fast, his strikes lacked power, and barely managed to scratch the skin of his rivals, who mocked his mediocre skills. However, Yellen was well aware of the cumulative effect of the forbidden sword technique and told them to be patient, for they would soon understand his sword. The 3rd cut was stopped by the lancer, the 4th was blocked by both, but they began to notice something strange. His attacks were becoming more powerful and harder to contain as his sword mastery became sharper and deeper. The fifth cut sounded with a metallic crash. Then came the sixth, the seventh, and by the eighth, the force was such that the swordsman's weapon shattered, sending him several meters back. The lancer, surprised and scared, called to his brother in desperation. Faced with the blessing of the eighth level of the forbidden sword technique, neither of them had the strength to withstand it. Yelin felt the intensity of that eighth strike. The principal excitedly declared that Yelin had obtained a SSS rank combat class, Forbidden Cursed Master. Clutching his chest in pain, he advanced toward the lancer with an obvious murderous intent. The terrified man asked him what kind of sword technique he was using and how it was possible for each strike to become stronger than the last under the light of the wind blade. Yelin's expression turned icy, and he replied that he didn't need to know. The sound of a sword cutting through flesh resonated in the air, and blood gushed like a fountain with a casual cut. Yelin ended the man's life. His lifeless body fell to the ground, and his brother screamed with a heart-wrenching roar, calling Yelin a demon, saying he was not human, and that he would suffer a miserable death. Yelin looked at him coldly and silently activated the curse spell of burning reincarnation, and ended him in an instant, incinerating him until he turned into charred flesh. While his bones were consumed by the flames, Recap Manhwa Yelin walked away with an air of superiority, coldly repeating that no one from there would leave alive. That day, Yelin also brought glory to the King Chen Academy, and everyone was proud of him. However, upon observing him more closely, the principal stopped dead in his tracks, his expression changing to astonishment, as he understood what that class meant. The Cursed Master was a profession that consumed the user's life to employ its abilities. No one with that class had survived past 25 years. For everyone, it was a discarded class, and that someone had taken a loan to obtain it was tragic. He unleashes his forbidden magic ages in seconds, and returns to normal before everyone's eyes. The students began to laugh at him upon hearing the news. Sugeni decided to walk away sighing, disappointed by the class that had fallen to Yelin. However, Yelin, who had always been a master of deception, pretended to be downcast. His act was so convincing that the old man even felt pity for him, patting him on the back and wishing him luck despite being a good boy. It was unfortunate that he only received the profession of Cursed Master. Yelin asked the principal if all Cursed Masters really died at 25. The principal replied that he shouldn't be negative, as it was better to shine brightly than to live the meaningless life. Yelin thanked him, expressing his desire to shine like the sun and bring honor to the school. The principal then told him that he would do special training for him along with Sugeni. Yelin accepted and smiled wickedly. He found it funny that it was said he would die soon just for having a double-edged profession. For him, that death threat meant nothing, as he had a secret ability that countered it, his immortality. After the class change ceremony, everyone decided to return home. Yelin planned to head straight to his, as he was tired and wanted to sleep well. But that night, someone from the past waits for him, the man who bought his organs. And what happens next? While walking, someone called him by name. It was Sugeni who proposed he join her because she believed that the more a Cursed Master fought, the faster they would die. She clarified that she had no bad intentions, just wanting to help him as a classmate. However, Yelin rejected the proposal. Sugeni didn't insist and walked away, muttering that Yelin was a stubborn one destined to die. Yelin ignored her and continued on his way. Shortly after, a group of students blocked his path. They told him he thought he was superior just for becoming a Cursed Master. They were his classmates and were upset because he didn't accept Sugeni's proposal to team up. Yelin got irritated, thinking that women were problematic, and over some simple words from Sugeni, these fools were now looking for a fight. He responded that he was just going home. They mocked him, laughing that he called his tiny 10-square-meter room home. The leader of the group humiliated him, saying that now that he was SSS rank, he could call him father and that he could even give him a job as a guard in the GC Corporation. The others laughed, adding that working at G Corp was a privilege too. Is the true beginning of his story. The story begins in the nightlife of the underground black market. They forced him to kneel before his young master, saying that with what they paid him, he could buy incense for his dead family from the orphanage. The taunts continued, claiming that as an orphan, he didn't even deserve to have a family. Yelin was already furious. He looked at them seriously, and his eyes began to burn with a blue and red aura as he activated his cursed magic. He warned them that they had forced him to do it. The three were shocked to see that he was willing to use a curse, even knowing the consequences it had. They wondered if he would really shorten his life just for a confrontation. Thus, Yelin unleashed a small lightning bolt to scare them. The attack was weak, but enough to intimidate the terrified classmates. They begged him not to use a forbidden curse against them. Yelin simply extended his hand, challenging them to come closer if they dared. They fled in terror. Yelin deactivated his power and muttered that they were pure trash. They had escaped with just one move as he continued walking. He felt his insides burning, not realizing that Sugeni had witnessed everything. She was upset, filled with neon lights in the city. 15, a hooded young man walked among the crowded streets because he let himself be provoked by insults and was willing to risk his life without thinking. She was convinced that someone like him would never go far and that he wasn't worthy of being by her side. Night fell and Yellen arrived home. He left his bag on the couch and sat down checking his system. He discovered that sacrificing a piece of intestines could invoke a normal lightning, while giving a bladder could call forth funeral water's thunder. Sacrificing a heart could bring a purple destructive lightning. If that was the case, Yellen concluded that by invoking the most powerful chaos thunder, he would die in the process. He leaned back on the couch feeling dizzy, even though he knew it was side effects from his body's recovery. Meanwhile, Linju went to his father, asking for revenge, and to send someone to eliminate Yellen. However, his father scolded him, reminding him that killing a SSS rank cursed master was too dangerous and without benefit. He warned him that someone capable of using forbidden spells, just for some insults, was emotionally unstable. He extinguished his cigarette in the ashtray and reminded his son